Hey everyone, Gravity here. Before the video begins, I simply ask that if you enjoy my content to hit that subscribe button below. Nowhere else on YouTube are you going to find a Battlefield player who's played with teams competitively since Battlefield 1942, nearly 18 years ago. Don't forget to subscribe, and please enjoy the video. Over the nearly 20-year history of the Battlefield franchise, there have been many great maps worthy of praise. Some maps become legendary, icons themselves of the Battlefield series and worth remembering for their balance, uniqueness, and special gameplay. This is the story of the best maps in Battlefield. Night maps have long been a bane of the Battlefield series. Most of the series games to attempt this in some form never seem to get it right. Many maps are either too bright to be considered dark, have a weird or blinding sunset, or are just way too dark altogether. Battlefield 1 was the first game in which night combat not only felt like it was passable, but done properly. Arguably one of the best maps of Battlefield 1, Prise de Tahure steps up the urban combat experience beyond that of even the beloved Amiens. Perhaps not quite a full night map, Tahure isn't exactly shrouded in total darkness, but this gives it a far more realistic and gloomier quality. The remains of the town are covered by streetlight and scattered rubble fires amongst the buildings, which actually provide just enough ambient light to see enemies most of the time. All night maps with low lighting are destined to have an issue with player visibility, but this map really tries to close that gap. Of course, if your monitor is set to a low brightness, you are going to have a bad time. Nevertheless, lanterns, lights, artillery flashes in the sky, and searchlights are there to help. Prise de Tahure was part of the They Shall Not Pass expansion for Battlefield 1, and actually added to the game post-expansion release. While not as outright popular as Amiens or Argonne, it is still a map that infantry players did not argue against playing. Taking a look at the overview of the map on Conquest, we will see that it is a 5-flag diamond layout map, with the C flag, the town square, dead in the center on a raised high ground. Had the map been staged in daylight, a comparison to Battlefield 3's Telemarket, once again, would not even be questioned. A dense and fairly clean urban battlefield map, Tahure has many streets and alleyways to traverse, far more than on Amiens. This is in addition to the many buildings that players can enter and walk through. Significant changes in elevation around the city towards the outskirts make for close engagements and sudden surprises. Rubble does litter the streets of the town a bit, particularly on the west side, but overall, it's pretty clear. It is only when leaving the town to approach the outer flags do players notice the war-torn terrain littered in mud and trenches. In this ring of wide streets and front lines around the town, players can usually find each team's single tank maneuvering around from flag to flag, as moving deeper into the town is a death trap for it. Players generally don't worry about them too much, as their low mobility makes them sitting ducks around most flags. As such, it is usually light tanks used on this map, and they have a very short lifespan unless used in the hands of an expert player. The 4 outside flags are connected via a single winding road, so choosing to rotate around the outskirts is an option. Each of these flags are fairly simple in design, with a few houses, a warehouse, and at least one defining feature. The B flag to the north has its deep, cross-shaped trench and small flag radius. The A flag to the west is a largely destroyed, rubble-filled mess. The D flag to the south has one elongated trench winding through the tram depot. And the E flag to the east is a close-quarters fight set amongst several buildings and high walls. The C flag in the center, Tahure Square, is an open plaza, with some staircases and fortifications surrounding the center monument. It might be tempting to approach, but players quickly learn that this is a bad idea. as nearly every surrounding building is accessible with multiple floors and open windows, making it a sniper and camper's paradise. The best advice is to leave this flag alone and rotate through the streets and the outer flags, where you will have a much better time engaging enemies. Tahure also has another advantage over Amiens and Argonne, and that is the lack of any comeback mechanic in the form of a behemoth or armored train. These are features that tend to be frustratingly annoying even on good maps or when they are dealt with quickly. The lack of any mega weapon on the map means you could focus on the streets and pay attention to the enemies lurking around every corner. Prise de Tahure's atmosphere for an infantry map gives an impression of what Battlefield 1942's Berlin map could have been if the technology was there at the time. Maybe it isn't a groundbreaking map, but the pathing options give it the same flavor as past great urban maps in the series, and it doesn't fall into the grind of Amiens' apartment camping. It is exceptionally balanced thanks to the layout, and base camping rarely occurs. Prise de Tahure follows a tried and true formula with the added spice of low lighting, a few tanks, and the World War I aesthetic, and that solidifies it as one of Battlefield 1's best. But going further down the rabbit hole of night maps, another Battlefield 1 map cannot be ignored. Championed as one of the most atmospheric and environmentally beautiful of the game, Nivelle Nights is so immersive, so detailed, so well lit, that at times some players might stop playing for a few seconds just to gaze in awe. And yet, despite the dark and horrific scene, it's actually an amazing map. Nivelle Nights is a 6-flag map of average size. Set along 2 opposing lines of trenches, the battle is fought both within them and in the bleak no-man's land between, where the debris of houses, trees, and spent shell casings litter the battered terrain. An overview of the map can explain what, in part, makes it great. You will notice that on each side near the main bases, each team has a long spawn border which leads into not 1, but 2 flags, the A and B flags for the French, and the E and F flags for the Germans. As mentioned at other points in this series, the map feature of having a long, open border transitioning into more than 1 flag is critical for map balance and stability, as a team caught in the main base against an enemy full cap then has the best chances of breaking out either by sneaking through an unguarded section or the team swaying en masse from close flag to close flag trying to find the weak point in a breakout attempt. Each of these base flags are part of the faction's trench networks, and scurrying between them through tunnels and field op centers may protect players from snipers, but there is some extra adrenaline to gain from anticipating multiple enemies at every turn. Next, you will notice the C and D flags in the center file. Each of these flags is the complete opposite of one another, and that is perfect. The C flag is a mess of impact craters which surround the carcass of a destroyed tank. It is on slightly lower terrain, and there is little cover aside from small hills and the craters themselves. As players move up toward the D flag, they will find themselves going uphill a bit, past shattered houses and a small bridge. There, past a lightly wooded area, the flag can be found in the landmark building of the map, the remains of the church. This critical flag is the site of hard-fought clashes between teams, as it provides excellent defensive cover for snipers aiming toward the trench lines. Its position also possesses better sightlines and safety for vehicles than most other places on the map, so tanks and artillery trucks tend to make their way there to this position. Lastly, no flag on this map is isolated. Each flag is a short run from one to the next, and it keeps the map flowing extremely well. In fact, the density of flags in combination with their positioning leads to a phenomenon known as NASCARing. Battlefield 1 was known for encouraging a gameplay meta of sticking together as a team and traveling together for safety. This happens on many of its maps innately, and this blob goes by various names including hordes and zerging, etc. But to NASCAR is the way in which this blob moves as a group in a circular pattern around the map, while the other team does the same. At times, these hordes can meet up and a massive clash will occur, while at other times, a few stragglers and ballsy players will turn back and try to take on the horde head-on. In any case, this scenario, for better or worse, keeps the map flowing and the flags changing, and there is rarely a dull moment. In addition to the fast-paced infantry combat, the map features one tank and one cavalry spawn from each team's deployment, so players will need to take care from being trampled or blasted from a camping tank. While the armor might be tempting to take on a horde, one downside of the terrain means that tanks and horses might get stuck in the trenches if you are not careful, or, if you happen to see an enemy in the trenches, an opportunity to pounce. Nivelle Nights is an incredibly balanced and horrifically beautiful Battlefield 1 map. While I reiterate over this series that a map's beauty does not make it good, Nivelle Nights is an example where amazing visuals can also be combined with a well-designed map experience to create something masterful. If anything, it accentuates the map to greater levels. The perfectly executed nighttime environment, its level of detail, its infantry-centric layout with just the right amount of armor. Everything blends to make Nivelle Nights one of the best Battlefield maps.